There is no substitution for experience.
Answering the phone with the right tone, that first impression. There's a first impression of when I meet you in person, and then there's a first impression when you're making a phone call, and that matters. That sets the tone for the proceeding interaction.
I really want to just refine what we're doing, continue to make things easier and better for the people that work for me, become more efficient.
Welcome back. This is the Mission Control Podcast brought to you by Ascend Digital Agency. I'm Mike Stearns. Today we have a very special guest, Cory Combs with SouthShore Roofing and Exteriors. Cory, thanks for coming aboard.
Yep, thanks for having me, Mike. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got an action-packed agenda for today. Cory opened his first full year of operations in Tampa, Florida for SouthShore Roofing and Exteriors in 2020. Soon thereafter, we entered into a global pandemic. Cory, what was that like after taking the plunge and deciding to get after it, right? Entering into a precarious situation like a pandemic.
Yeah. Of course, when it first hit, we were, everybody was really scared. I was terrified. I thought that, it was going to basically be the end of my business. And what actually happened, oddly enough, thank goodness we had a great governor in Florida who kept business open. A lot of people decided to move to Florida, and we actually exploded because there were so many people moving. There were so many houses that needed new roofs to close the deal. At the same time, insurance companies were tightening restrictions on what they would write policies for in terms of the age of the roof. And so it actually ended up being what looked like the worst thing that could happen is probably the best thing that could happen.
Wow, that's interesting. So tell everybody a little bit about Cory Combs. What's your history? How did you end up where you're at today?
Okay. Yeah, so I just want everybody to know I came to the podcast with my Ascend Digital shirt on because I support Ascend Digital, and Mike Mike found it funny. I was kind of clowning him a little bit, but yeah, man, Cory Combs. I've been in the roofing industry since 1993. Started as a laborer, and one of the things that I'm pretty passionate about too is recovery and helping guys in recovery and back when I started roofing, the reason I started roofing is because I kind of have a drug alcohol problem, and roofing was a good place to kind of hide out. It didn't really matter, but it was a valuable time in my life because I learned how to roof. I learned the roofing industry, and shortly after that, my family started buying properties and got into flipping properties and things like that. So I'm a lifelong, born and raised in Florida, and I learned a lot about the construction industry. I learned a lot about budgeting. I learned all that stuff. And then 2008 hit, and I didn't have a job anymore. Basically, like construction, residential housing was just no more. I mean, it just like somebody turned off a faucet.
Okay.
But what I had to do was I had to find another job, and I had a friend of mine. So right around that time, I was starting to try to figure out my life and get cleaned up. And a guy gave me a shot working for his marketing company that traveled all over the U.S. doing health club marketing programs and sales marketing programs. And that's where I learned about sales and marketing, the fundamentals of sales, the fundamentals of marketing, and I really learned how to sell at that point. So, again, we look back at like what seemed to be really bad times that actually turned out to be really a blessing in disguise because it forced me to get out of my comfort zone and learn something new. So, with that, I took that back to when, in 2010, I moved to Buffalo, New York with my wife, who's from Buffalo, New York. Got a job working for a large company there. They do, roofing, remodeling, things like that. And I really got to put the sales fundamentals to the test. And, every year I was their top sales guy. I was selling, 2.5, 2.7, 2.8 million every year for that company. And so, all of that stuff that I learned, the operations stuff that I learned when we were flipping houses, the sales stuff, all of that stuff really helped me when I decided to start my own business here in Florida. Yep.
Wow, that's incredible, man. So you had touched on recovery, and I mean that is obviously something that it's not just you. There's a lot of people that struggle, with being dependent on you name it, right? And it's not an easy battle to fight. It's an ongoing battle. So let's talk a little bit about how you found success as far as the road to recovery and what that's looked like for you.
Yeah, it's it was a tough one, man. I mean, I started smoking. I started smoking pot when I was like 12, 13 years old, and it was just I hit the road running from there. And so growing up, I didn't graduate high school. I didn't go to college. I didn't do any of that stuff. I mean, I just got right into the trades, and you know, it's pretty common in the trades. I mean, construction industry, a lot of substance abuse, specifically in roofing, lots of substance abuse. And so it wasn't until, I was 24 that I really figured that I was having a tough time. I mean, nothing ever worked out. It was problem after problem after problem. And I tried to sober up, man, and it was tough, and I spent a lot of years, going in and out, and I finally ended up in, I started doing Narcotics Anonymous and, multiple rehabs and all those different things. And it wasn't until, I just got to the point where I just had enough, man. And I got into Alcoholics Anonymous. And even though I was more of a junkie than I was an alcoholic, I found what I needed in AA. And, God willing, in December, I'll be celebrating 14 years sober.
That's amazing. Congratulations, man.
Yeah.
So, was there an event in particular where it kind of flipped a switch to where the need, because I feel I in the past I've struggled with certain dependencies, and for me there was an aha moment where it was like, okay, if you don't pivot, if you don't change your lifestyle, you're not going to be here much longer, right? Was it a certain event, or was it kind of just straws piling up on the camel's back? What was it that got you to that point to take action?
Yeah, I mean the straws that keep piling up on your back, I think typically get you to a point where they call it your bottom, and one of the big ones was, my 24th birthday, I have a twin brother, and he came to pick me up, and he's like, "Hey, we're going to go out and, celebrate." And I ended up going out with them to a TGI Fridays, and it was a bunch of people that I went to high school with, a bunch of people that I grew up with. And everybody was starting to be successful. Everybody was getting their, their nicer cars. And I didn't even have a license at the time. I couldn't drive. I lost my license. And it just, I was sitting there with everybody at TGI Fridays. I was hooked on heroin at the time. And I just felt like a piece of trash, man, with all of those people. And I ended up getting into a fight at TGI Fridays because I was just so... I was just so uncomfortable, and I wound up getting into a fight and turned into this whole thing. And my brother takes me home after all of that, and I went upstairs to my apartment that was just a shitty apartment, and I looked in the mirror and I just said to myself, I was like, I fucking hate you, like I hate you, and proceeded to just trash my apartment,
Wow. Okay.
And after that, I was sitting there and I just had they call this moment of clarity, man, where, and I'm kind of getting goosebumps talking about it, where it was like, you're going to be okay. And I have these tattoos on the back of my arm that say "in due time," because it was like something spoke to me, and I believe it to be God, higher power spoke to me at that point and just said, just give it time. You're going to be okay, and that was the start of me trying to do something different. And that road was really long. I mean, we could talk for 3 hours about what that road looked like, but that was the start of when I was really trying to get myself together and get sober.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's so AA has been a crucial piece of that
Yeah,
equation, right? And I think,
100%.
there's the support, the structure to that. I think, the mentor or sponsor rather, right? I've talked to a lot of people who have found a lot of great success in that. And I think it's really challenging to see, the upside and the light at the end of the tunnel when we're stuck in these ruts, right? That are addiction
Yeah.
or anything else. And kudos to you, man, because it's not easy. It's obviously something a ton of people struggle with. So congratulations on your sobriety. That is amazing.
Yeah, I guess the theme is, events that seemed like they were catastrophic, right? But ended up being the biggest blessing. And I think that's one of the reasons why, business, I've been able to sort of weather and have thick skin in business because, you know, when you're dealing with something like that and the work that it takes and the they call it stick to itiveness it takes to get sober and to go through the steps and to deal with the uncomfortability and to deal with the depression and the all of the stuff that comes along with getting sober and being able to stick to what you're doing and have people support you and all the step work that you do and the writing and the reflecting and the trying to change and all of that stuff, man, has really helped me, in my business too, because at the end of the day, you're taught that like everything starts and stops with you, man. You're responsible for it, right?
Accountability.
Like you're responsible for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Accountability. Yep. So that was another one of those situations where it seemed to be just catastrophic for me and ended up being one of the best things that could ever happen. Such a blessing.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point. And I mean, you could even take it out of the context of this situation is, trying to be acutely aware of the fact that, we tend to make mountains out of molehills sometimes, right?
Sure.
And trying to find a way to realize that some things that in the moment seem so incredibly crippling, if we look at our entire picture of life and things that we've been through and things that we're going to go through eventually, it's like I have a tendency personally, and from people that I've spoken with in the past, it's like it's really hard to take those day-to-day tasks that really aren't a big deal. And I'm not trying to dilute how big of a deal addiction is and the struggle, because again, I've experienced it firsthand and it is the weight of the world on top of you. But I think in day-to-day business even, we have, these tasks. Some are tedious, some are very, very important, some are less important. But even for me, like the less important ones, I let turn into a boatload of stress for me, right? And I
Yeah.
think of the worst case scenario, and maybe 99% of the time, it's never going to actualize as the worst case scenario. But the stress and anxiety that can sometimes result and manifest itself as a result of me saying, "Well, what if?" Right?
Yeah.
It's an
Yeah.
interesting perspective.
Yeah, I mean, there's the saying is like feelings aren't fact, right? And sometimes you just have to remember that. And I, the interesting thing is you never know when somebody's going to make a deep impact in your life. And we're doing this commercial job in Jacksonville right now, and I had just met this guy. We're working together. He brought a pretty good sized job to me, and when we were unloading the materials off it's a fluid applied roofing, and when we were loading the materials off the truck, a bunch of it spilled all over the parking lot. Like some of the containers punctured. I mean, it was just dude. It's like one of the like if you could picture the worst scenario, that was like one of the worst scenarios, right? And this guy, he says we got to figure this out. We got to clean it up. And he says to me, he's like, "Hey man, you know what? This sucks, but it's just a situation that needs to be handled. It's like if I'm upset, it doesn't matter.
Right.
The situation's a situation, right?"
Right.
And I'm like, man, that is such a wise perspective and it actually changed how I view problems, believe it or not, because it doesn't matter if I'm upset or not. the problem's the problem. The problem's there. It's going to have to be dealt with no matter what my mind state is. So why not just accept it as the problem,
Right.
handle it as the problem, and not as a personal attack on me,
Right.
right?
Yeah. I mean,
So
there's a ton of value and virtue in that, right? And like you said, being
yeah,
open, you have to be aware, right? Self-aware of who you are, what your tendencies are, and be open-minded to other people's perspective in order to have that type of situation to where you gain that perspective from somebody else that, like you said, it could be minimally impactful, it could have no impact, or it could have a massive impact. Like, these opportunities for change present themselves every single day in some capacity, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just for perspective, man, it was about $65,000 worth of material
Oh, that's
laying
it?
spread out. Yeah, oh yeah.
Great way to start
So
a
when
new relationship with a new customer. Perfect.
yeah. So, but we handled it. We took care of it, and the client was, actually, as a matter of fact, again, another situation where we were looking at like, man, this is the worst thing can happen. We got it cleaned up. We handled it, and the client said, you know what? You never know what kind of people you're dealing with until something bad happens. And he's like, I'm grateful that I'm working with you guys because I can see what kind of character you have now, right? And I was like, great. I have a lifelong client now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
Hopefully the next one doesn't cost you a $65,000 accident to get in that situation. But
well,
silver linings.
the silver linings, man. And you know what? The distributor stepped up and, we send them pictures, we send them everything, and they were really great about it, man. They're helping us out tremendously.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, so yeah, it sucked. I mean, we're gonna lose some money on that one, but everybody came together. We handled the situation. Everybody supported one another, and it, ended up being a shitty situation that turned out, okay. Yep.
Perspective. Speaking of silver linings, we're going to go off script for a second here, even though there's not technically a script at all for this. This is kind of a spontaneous conversation. But Silver Linings Playbook with Bradley Cooper, one of my favorite movies. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's great.
I've seen it 5 or
It's a
6
good movie.
times. I mean, when he takes the Ernest Hemingway book and throws it out the window and starts berating his parents about how shitty it was for Ernest Hemingway to write the book the way he did, I got to tell you, it did something to me. So, okay, fantastic. So, you mentioned that you, in '08, you guys were kind of your family was into buying properties, things like that. Everyone knows the turmoil that resulted in that 2008 bubble. You found yourself looking for a job, and you said that you landed in a sales position in fitness?
Yeah, man. So I was newly sober at the time, which I had a relapse. So if everybody's like counting the math and saying, wait, this doesn't match up. Yes, I was sober at the time and I did have a relapse. But yeah, man, we were traveling around the country and helping gyms bring in more clients. And then more importantly, training the staff on how to sell the gym memberships, but also present the gym in a way that more people would want to come and join and things like that. So it was really kind of a cool detour in my life outside of doing construction to get a real perspective on some of the things that business owners struggle with. And then, more importantly, how to structure campaigns in order to be able to sell so that you can bring customers into your business and, even go even further, have a business that these customers will want to give you money basically and buy whatever you're selling. Yeah.
Okay.
It was a valuable experience.
So how has that experience, how have you used that? Have you parlayed that experience into what you do for your sales process now in your roofing company?
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, that was my first introduction into, what we call in sales objection handling, right?
Okay.
I didn't know there was such a thing as objection handling. So we had our objection handling strategy with that was called the bullets in the gun, right? So we had 5 bullets in our gun, and it's kind of a crude, it's kind of a crude metaphor, but it really gave us a tool to actually help the people we train remember those 5 points so that they can handle that objection, so they can handle the objections, boom, 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 systematically. Yep.
Okay. So when you approach your sales process, do you have a sales process for each and every one of your sales reps that's defined?
I have such a detailed sales process that we were just talking about it this morning to try to maybe simplify it a little bit because I have a very detailed sales process. We have a sales process that starts out at the initial call. So our admin that answers the phone, she understands she's a part of the sales process. Then
Hold on,
the initial call.
let's not just glaze over that. Why is she an important aspect of the sales process?
Well, she's the first contact, right? So she has to understand how to set up everybody else from the first phone call down the line, and she has to understand at least the second part of the sales process, the goal of the second part. So not only can she filter out people that we might not be able to help, but she's also going to be able to ask the relevant questions to get the information we need to put them in the next part of the process.
So first step is having a live contact and qualifying that customer, getting information that you need.
Correct.
Okay.
So the second step of that is the salesperson actually reaches out, and we call that the pre-call, right? And so the salesperson actually reaches out to the homeowner. Now, there's a couple things. We need to make sure we're actually dealing with the property owner, right? We need to make sure that we can have access to the property. And number three, we need to make sure somebody's there so that we can facilitate the other part of the process, which is going out and meeting the client and assessing their needs and really digging into what they need and what they want.
Smart. What do you feel the most important qualifying question is when a prospective customer is considering choosing SouthShore and you're going through those first two steps of your sales process?
Well, that's a trick question, man, because there isn't one important question. I mean, it really depends on the situation, right? And it really depends on the person and sort of their perspective, right? And I'll give you an example. There are some people that have never bought a roof before, and they've never dealt with a contractor, and so their perspective is going to be a lot different than somebody that maybe owned a few different homes. They put on a roof before. Maybe they've had a problem with their contractor. Maybe they love their contractor. But those two people are going to have completely different perspectives on the situation. So depending on, and that's one of the most important, is figuring out what that buyer is and what category they fit into.
Okay.
Before we go into the rest of it, because that's going to really dictate the questions that we ask next.
Yeah, that's really good insight. Did you always have an admin?
No. Year one, I was doing everything, man. I was answering the phone, scheduling appointments, scheduling builds, selling. I was doing everything, man.
Did you find it challenging because you value that first interaction, as you should. I think it's a very undervalued, if we look at it at the macro level, I feel like it's a very undervalued aspect of the sales.
What do you mean by that? Let's say what do you mean?
Well, in my experience, I run a digital marketing agency, and we listen to calls that come through to clients. And I think that, a lot of individuals assume that like calls are going to be answered. They're going to be handled correctly. They're going to even answering the phone with the right tone, right? That first impression, right? Because there's a first impression of when I meet you in person, and then there's a first impression when you're making a phone call, and that matters. That sets the tone for the proceeding interactions, right?
Yep.
So I think it's largely important, right? And you valuing that so much, as I stated, you should. Did you find it challenging to find somebody who matched your energy, that could handle that side of it enthusiastically, with the right attitude, with your process? Because I've found that a lot of people struggle to find that office manager, that admin, administrative assistant. We can argue semantics on what that title is, but I find that a lot of people have struggled in finding that right person.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I did. One of the biggest things that I've learned over the time that I've been in, operating is I didn't value that first interaction as much as I do now early on,
Okay.
right? Because I learned that I was losing a lot of people on the front end because of things that I was failing to do. Meaning, people would either call and I wouldn't get to the call, and they would go to voicemail and I would never be able to get them back on the phone, or we didn't ask the right questions on the front end and we ended up turning somebody away, or whatever the situation was. So over the years, developed that process and developed that um, the perspective of how important it is to get those people on the front end and have the appropriate not only person but questions and process to deal with those people on the front end. So because I didn't value it and because I didn't really understand what I needed, I did struggle finding the right person because I didn't know exactly what I was looking for. Now, fast forward, when I realized what it was and I knew exactly what I was looking for, what person I was looking for, it was much, much easier to find it because I was hiring for that particular person and not for the particular role, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, and and then you can clearly lay out what their job function is, what their expectation from you to that person is, right? Which is just such a crucial part of any successful relationship. And if we're talking about an owner to an office admin or to a sales rep, or you with your significant other, or a company with their customer, right? If we don't have expectations as far as what we want out of someone else in order for that relationship to be perceived as good for both
100%.
parties, you're destined
100%.
for failure, right? Yeah,
Yep.
so that's awesome, man. So you've got a great admin, right? So we're through 2 steps of the sales process. What does the rest of your process look like?
Yeah, I just want to back up just a little bit on that. So you hit the nail on the head, okay? When I understood what I needed from that process and I also understood what I needed from that person, I was able to go out and I was able to find that person that had the attributes that I knew I needed, let them know that I needed those attributes, and then plugged them into that system and process with the attributes that they already had. And that is I think why she's so successful, because I wasn't expecting her to do something that was outside her character. You know what I
That's
mean?
brilliant. Yeah, and,
Yeah.
and I think that would be easy to
So
miss.
yeah, yep. But I didn't know that until I smashed my face against the wall a bunch of times and couldn't figure out why I wasn't getting what I needed.
Right. Well, it's
But it goes yeah, well, it goes back to that personal responsibility and accountability, right? Like this is my problem to figure out,
right.
not my admins.
And being aware and reflecting, like how is something like that going to manifest itself? And maybe it's something where you're not closing a high enough percentage of your leads, right? And it's like, okay, so why is this happening, right? And whether it's a one-man band or it's a 50-person company, if you're closing leads at 15 or 20%, there's a reason why, right? So like now we can figure out, okay, let's back into and reflect why this is happening. Let's look at our data. And maybe
Unless you're advertising on Facebook, then your closing rate's gonna suck.
that notwithstanding, so if you take a look at it, like, why does this happen? Is it we don't have a good sales process? Do we not have the right people in the right seat from a sales perspective? Are the calls not being handled correctly at the onset? Having the right people in the right seat is monumental when it comes to trying to be successful, right? So, yeah, dude, that's amazing. So you were aware of that. You pivoted, right? Just as important it is a plan, you got to be able to pivot away from what the initial plan was as things change. So let's talk about, as your customers moving through that life cycle that they're going to have with your company, what does the rest of it look like?
Yeah, so the next part is, we're turning these people over to the salesperson. So they're on the schedule, and our sales team's trained to, I don't take, so I don't, I'm a lot different than most owners. I've learned that you can't just allow your customers to dictate your schedule, right? You have to dictate your schedule to your customers. So
Aha.
what I did Yeah. So what I did was I trained my sales guys like we don't take appointments until at least 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, right? And people are looking at me like, well, you're crazy. The rationale behind that is that gives the sales team time to get organized in the morning, make their calls, make sure that they reach out to their appointments for the day, and gives them time to organize what they need to complete throughout the day. The big part of that is reaching out to their customers and making sure they do their pre-call and confirm those appointments.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's the next part. And then we ask a few simple questions. Are you the homeowner? What's going on that I can help you with? When are you looking to complete this? Mm. And depending on what they answer and some of the questions, we have some other questions, making sure that they're going to be there. And if they say, well, I'm not going to be there, because you get that a lot, well, I figured you could just, do whatever.
Email a quote.
And then we explain to them. Huh?
Email a quote.
Yeah, email me the quote, right? And we explain to them, hey, we need to do a thorough inspection. We want to make sure that we don't miss anything, etc. We'd really like somebody to be there, and so we want to make sure the homeowner's there at the property when we do our inspection.
Okay, yeah, that's really good.
That's the next part of the cycle.
Okay, so homeowner's going to be there. They've answered the qualifying questions, and then we get them on the schedule. Rep A shows up, and you just one call close them, right?
No, sir.
Huh?
No, sir. No, we do not one call close.
How come?
So I get a lot of shit for this in the roofing community, but it's almost impossible to do a one call close without being either A, super prepared and super diligent, meaning you have both buyers there, you've done a lot of homework up front, and you have a really outstanding process while you're there to do a one call close. Now, it's important to note, I don't do insurance work. I don't do any insurance work. Okay, this is all retail, and the reason that it's almost impossible to do a one call close, because the chances of both buyers being there while you're doing your inspection is almost impossible. The other problem is that while you're doing your inspection and while you're engaging with the homeowner, if you're going to one call close them, you're going to take up so much of their time at that one sitting that they're gonna get fatigued, and it's going to be hard to close them without a hard close sales gimmicky process.
Okay.
So over the years, I've learned that we just do our homework on the site visit, meaning we do our roof inspection, we do our attic inspection, and we do our homework on what our prospective client values, what they need, and what their perspective is on this project overall. And then we set a follow-up with them to do the fourth and final piece of the puzzle.
Gotcha. So you think it's very important to get in the attic, get someone on the roof?
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you how many jobs we get because we go up in the attic and we find things that nobody else addressed with the homeowner, or we get up on the roof and we address a bunch of things. I mean, one of the things that's important to us is to really give the homeowner a detailed account of why we're recommending full replacement and what's actually going on with their roof, so they can feel comfortable with their buying decision versus me just throwing a price at them and saying, hey, you need to do this, right?
Yeah, no doubt about it. So you've had customers explicitly tell you this is why we went with you?
We get it all the time. I mean, people even take the time to write that in their reviews. They're like, man, they were thorough, they were diligent, they explained everything to us, and that's why we went with them, even though that were more money.
Interesting. So, being that that's a part of your process, and being that people have explicitly told you that's part of a big part, it seems, of their decision making process, how were you able to handle that throughout COVID, and especially in the very beginning? Did you guys struggle to get in front of people, to get on the property?
Yeah, I mean, we just changed the way that we were doing it, and we changed the way that we reached out to people. We would let them know that the inspection was, contact free,
Okay.
and that we didn't need them to, we didn't need to come inside the home. If they weren't comfortable with us getting in the attic, we didn't need to. However, it was an important part of it, and then we would just let them know that if we did miss something, then there would be an additional work order, and people responded really well to it. And then what we started doing is, with our appointment, we sent out an email that just explained the process, and then also showed them that we do our follow-ups via Zoom, and what Zoom was and how Zoom worked, so that they were familiar with it when we asked them to set up a follow-up via Zoom. And it was extremely successful.
So, being proactive and setting expectations.
Being proactive and setting
Nice,
expectations.
dude. That's amazing.
Yep.
So, what would you say? How many leads do your guys run a day from the sales side?
So that depends, man. I mean, I'm a no more than 2 leads a day kind of guy. And sometimes they run 3, but three's a little much.
Is it because your allotment of time in the morning to get them prepared, organized, situated, that you think 2 makes a good number? 2's a company, 3's a crowd?
2's a company, 3's a crowd. Well, 1, we live in Tampa, so traffic all hours of the day is just obscene. So that's one of them. The other thing is I have one of my sales guys. He always says, "Man, I gotta love the one I'm with, right?" So I don't want to have them so crunched for time that they're not going to give the attention and time to the homeowner that the homeowner deserves. Look, one of the things we tell our prospects when we're out there was we remind them that they're about to spend a lot of money, right? And we do that because we want them to understand, like, this isn't something you just need to be cavalier about. Like, you're about to spend a lot of money. We really need to figure out what your needs and wants are, and we really need to figure out what's important to you as a buyer when you're hiring and vetting a contractor to work on the biggest investment of your lifetime, right?
Yeah.
And so in order for us to do that, we need to be able to spend some time with them, and we need to be able to give them attention. If we're running a bunch of appointments, then we might not be able to do that, and I don't want the guys to rush through that.
Gotta love the one you're with. I love that.
I did too. When he said it, I was like, "That's brilliant,
Yeah.
man! I love it." And what it did was help me understand, or help me realize he
Cares.
truly understood what we were trying to do.
That's what did he sell last year?
What did he sell last year? Oddly enough, man, he's only been with me since March.
Wow. Okay.
Yep.
He
Yep.
doing well?
He's doing well. He's such a kind-hearted person that he struggles with the closing sequences because he feels like he doesn't want to be a high-pressure guy. And what he doesn't understand is that our closing sequence isn't high pressure. So he could be doing better where he lets people he lets people off the hook, and I know that sounds bad, but he lets people off the hook too easy.
Okay.
So we're working with him to be able to close people a little bit better. But he finishes at about 150, 170K a month, which isn't terrible, but he could be doing a lot better.
Okay. Well, that's like you said. You acknowledge that it's your opportunity to coach him through, right, and make what's good better. So kudos.
Yeah. And by the way, being a $1 million producer in my company is unacceptable.
Hot take coming from Cory. Okay. So
Yeah.
what did you do year one revenue wise? What are you on pace to do this year?
Year one did about 1.6 million, and that was me doing everything. Um, we are on track right now to, if things stay status quo, which they're not going to. I have a bunch of big deals in the works, but we're going to do about 10 million this year.
Wow. Okay. What do you
Yep.
attribute? What are the main components of the recipe that is South Shore Roofing and Exteriors right now that has gotten you? I mean, that's incredible growth year over year, right? So,
It's insane.
do you feel like it's a system and process thing that has made that possible? Is it a leads thing? Is it having the right sales guy? What is it for you that has made the biggest impact and enabled you to scale at that pace?
Yes to all of the
Okay,
questions,
got
right?
it.
I mean,
Well, there's a lot of guys out there
um,
that they're looking, right. They might be year one, they might be year two, and they're looking to take that next step. So I guess the better question is like, what advice do you have for them through your experience to actualize that?
this is another hot take, and I really struggle with trying to change my perspective on this, but there is no substitution for experience, like none, right? I mean, getting mentors and coaches and all of that stuff is great, and it's extremely valuable and extremely helpful. But there's just no getting around having to go through and gain experience.
Okay.
So I think number one is I've got a lot of experience in the business. I've got a lot of experience in what I learned when I went to work for, the sales and marketing company. And then even more than that, like I thought that I had a bulletproof system when I opened my company. And my experience was like I really had to like modify a lot of things that I thought were gonna work. So, you know, yeah, man, I was not so in love with any of my ideas that I wasn't willing to like change them, sit down, reflect, figure out why things aren't working, and try to map out what the next thing is. And the other thing that I've done is I've really created an environment in my company where we collaborate, man. I talk to everybody and I find out what's working for them and what's not working for them, and I map that out and I ask them, what they think I could do better as a leader and as an owner, and I map that out and I make those changes. And I think even more than that, like I go through and I write all these things out and I develop these processes and I run them by the team, and we either add things or we take things out that aren't going to work, and we just continually try to refine what we're doing to make it easier and more streamlined. At the end of the day, we all know that the goal is two things. One, to have a good life balance, work life balance, where we don't have a bunch of pissed off customers. And two is to provide outstanding customer service so that it makes everybody's life easier and people buy from us.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's really good. How important is culture within a company?
I think that's a buzzword that a lot of people don't understand.
Elaborate.
And so I have a really close friend who works for a company. He's a therapist, right? And he works for a company where there's 9 therapists that work for this company. And the person that owns the company, she said that she wants to have a collaborative culture. She wants to have a culture where people feel safe, there's no negativity, et cetera, et cetera. And so what she does is she has these meetings and she like, does all these things, these team building exercises and all these things to try to build this culture.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is the fundamental things that undermine culture are lack of trust in your leaders, right? And so the reason I say that is because she continually does things that undermine what she's trying to do from an operational standpoint and from a trust standpoint. And that's why I say I don't think people understand that, understand the buzzword culture, because you can't build a culture unless the people on your team trust you. That has to be number one. And so I think the reason that the people who work for me trust me is because they know that I'm willing to get into the trenches with them and work alongside them to make sure that what I'm telling them and what I ask them to do is the right thing for everybody. And even more than that, like I've been in their shoes, even down to the installers that work for me, which by the way, that's the other piece that a lot of people miss in the roofing industry. They talk about building a culture, but they subcontract out everything and they never build any continuity with the labor side. And so therefore they can never really get it right because they don't have any consistency on that part of it. So all my guys are W-2. They all work for me. They're all my employees. And I'll get up on the roof with them. And if there's stuff that's not right, I'll show them what I want and I'll show them how to do it. And they know that I've done this before. And I value them, and I value them enough to make sure that they're happy and they're comfortable as well. So I guess going back to what do I mean by a lot of people don't understand like actually how to build the culture, it has to be from all the way from your labor, from your lowest paid, what you view to be the most inconsequential position, which is a mistake because they all have a high impact on your company, all the way through to the leader, to the owner, and making sure that the leader and the owner helps the people understand that everything we're doing is in the interest of trying to make sure that they can do their job well and they're comfortable and they feel valued. And so that's really what I focus on, is looking at things from everybody's vantage point all the way down. And how can I show them that I value them and I want them to have the resources and the support to complete their job as easy and as best as possible.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, and I agree with a lot of that. And it's one of those things where whether it's installers, whether it's salespeople, whether it's project managers, I've found consistently that a lot of folks have issues finding too, but retaining good employees, right? And I think, I'm sure there's varying degrees on what culture entails and how to get there, right? What the roadmap looks like to having a strong culture. But I think that the more people enjoy what they do, are bought into that they're making an impact, right? On, in this instance, the homeowner, like they're providing a good experience. They believe in what you guys are doing as a company and the products that you guys are installing. The less susceptible you become to, I'm going to leave here because I'm going to make $1 an hour more over there. Because there's always going to be somebody else that will outbid you and pay just a little bit more, right? In theory.
Sure. Sure.
And absent of having that sticky relationship to where somebody actually enjoys what they do. Me personally, I left a job where I made really good money. Because the culture, what I wanted out of the company wasn't necessarily there, right? And it was a big risk for me to take. But at the end of the day, when you get past whatever that dollar amount is that you can live comfortably and do things that you want, how big is the correlation between those additional funds, that additional disposable income, and your happiness? And I think that a lot of people would find as they start making more money, there's not a strong correlation after being able to provide for your basic needs and having some semblance of money to do some things that you want outside of basic needs. There's not a huge correlation between that additional money that you're going to make and that happiness. So, yeah, I agree. Having that culture, or however we want to define it, can make a huge impact on your company. and it seems trivial, right? Like make people feel valued, make them feel like they're a part of the process and that they matter. Um, it seems like something that's just intuitive, but I think that unless you have attention to that and have a concerted effort consistently, it's easy for some of those activities or conversations that create that warm and fuzzy feeling for your employees to kind of go by the wayside, right? Because we get so busy running our business on a day-to-day basis. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, even down to the way that we schedule appointments for our reps, right? I tell them, so when I hire my sales reps, which they're all 100% commission. I mean, I pay them when we're training them, which a lot of roofing companies don't. So I give them paid training. We call it the training wheels, and I'll even allow them while I'm paying them to go out and write deals and still give them commission on their deals because I want to set them up early on and I want them to make money because I want them to see the value in what they're doing, right? I know that I'm going to lose a little bit of money on the front end with them, but that's okay because I want the right people in place, and so uh, that's sort of how I help them dip their toe into understanding that I'm really out to help them make money, because at the end of the day, man, you hear this a lot, and I think some people really believe in it, and I think some people just say it, but when you help others win, the natural thing is everybody's going to win. Like, so when my sales guys make money, guess what?
You make money.
The company
Yeah,
makes money.
right.
Yeah, and I make money. So we do what's called a hierarchy of needs when I'm sorry, hierarchy of responsibilities. It comes off of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So and so we do the hierarchy of responsibility when they start with me, and we go through and I explain to them what the hierarchy of responsibility is in this company and how everything we do is built off of that. And do you know what the number one thing on the hierarchy is?
Money?
They make money and I make money. That's what we're doing here. And I don't try to hide it, and I don't try to repackage it. I don't try to do anything. I was like, you're working here so you can make money. You're taking a risk being commission sales so that you can enjoy your life. You can structure your calendar so that you have freedom. All those different things. You're high risk but also high reward, right? So let's operate under that understanding, and here's how we're going to do that. So, and I tell them, like, look, we don't schedule night and weekend appointments. And why don't we schedule night and weekend appointments? Well, because I want them to have the flexibility to do that if they want to, or not if they don't want to. What I've learned in this business, and I'm gonna go back to what I said, is you cannot allow your customers to dictate your schedule, right? If they see value in the service you provide, they will make time to meet with you. It has to be mutually beneficial. So that's another way that they feel valued, because I don't dictate that they don't spend time with their family on nights and weekends. So again, it goes, you talk about building culture, it goes to them really on a deep level feeling like you value them in their time, and you're not just saying things, or you're not just, doing a company fishing trip, or you're not just, whatever it is, right? Mm-hmm. They really see from like how the company operates that you value them and value their time. And because of that, they want to be part of the organization. So now I'm gonna go a little bit further, and you talked about recruiting earlier. Well, when you have people that love where they work and they feel a part of and they feel valued and all of those different things, they'll go out and they'll find people for you. And so everybody else that works for me, other than the first 3 people that I hired, I haven't put out an ad. I haven't done any of that stuff. The people that work for me have gone out and found people for me and brought them into the team. And it's crazy how, we talk about attraction rather than promotion. And when you have that, attraction and people want to come work for you, they want to be a part of what you're building. And, I tell everybody that comes to work for me, I'm like, look, I want you to understand this is a democratic dictatorship, right? I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to value your opinion. And we're going to create, we're going to continue to refine our processes built on the feedback that you guys give me. But at the end of the day, you're going to do things the way that I dictate they're done. You know, people do market research by going out and talking to customers or potential customers about their service, right? And they ask them questions and they get feedback so that they can change things on how they present their product or service to potential
Sure.
customers. Well, I take that same strategy and I do it internally with the people that work for me so that I can make sure that it's a good place for them to work.
So you're taking the pulse. So how frequently are you doing that?
Constantly, man. And I'm even, when I notice somebody's stressed out or something's going on with them, that's one of the things we sit down and we talk with them. What's going on? What can we do? What can we help? How can we support you? And if it's a matter of like, hey, we need to help you learn how to manage your time and your schedule better, we'll do that. If it's, there are continually issues that we need to solve, um, and it's a failure from one of our processes, okay, then we're going to diagnose that. We're going to patch that up, and we're going to either pivot or we're going to create a new process to make sure that those things don't continue to happen, because I don't want you to continually be under stress, because that's a really good way for you to learn how to hate your job, and then you're not going to do your job well, you're not going to service our customers well, and it's just a negative impact all the way through.
Yeah. Huh.
So constantly is the answer to the question.
Constantly.
Constantly taking the pulse.
So do you have a system in place so where you're doing it weekly? Are you doing it monthly? Like, how do you ensure that you find the time to do this?
Yeah, I mean, I have meetings the with the admin side every week, right? And we have our agenda for our key metrics that we take a look at to make sure that we're doing well. And one of them is if we're having sustained issues in a certain area, right? That's one of the key metrics that we look at. And then we look at how that affects the team going forward, right? Does it affect the sales team? Does it affect the managers? Whatever it is. And then if it does, then what can we do to alleviate that? And then I have a meeting with the sales guys every week, and that's one of the things we talk about. What are you guys seeing? What are you struggling with? What can we do to help? And that's really how we start out the meeting. And then we go through the stuff that we need to go through in the sales meeting. So yeah, we do have a system in place for that.
I think that's really good. And, even if it's something you had referenced a democratic dictatorship, right? So I think it's important, you set that expectation. That's important. But checking in and letting employees and team members engage in cathartic behavior, right? Talking about how they feel openly, even if it doesn't influence change every single time. Maybe sometimes it does, maybe sometimes it doesn't. I think just you hearing them out and having that open door policy bodes really well for them feeling as if they're valued, which they are valued, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
sometimes people are valued and they don't feel valued. Like that happens. That's a thing.
Right.
So yeah, that's a good way of tackling that. So I'm glad it's working out for you.
Yeah, and sometimes people get caught in this, what's called a negative feedback loop, right? So they get stressed about something, and it might not be work related. They might get stressed about something, and then something happens at work, or there's something going on with us, or I mean, look, it's construction, so there's things crop up all the time.
Sure.
I mean, there's no avoiding it. You have to have thick skin to work in this industry, and I tell everybody that works for me, like, listen, you have to have thick skin to work in this industry, because things are gonna happen. It just does. But understanding people can get caught in those negative feedback loops, and then taking their temperature and talking with them and saying, hey man, what's going on? What can we do to help you? And digging into, getting them out of that negative feedback loop is so critical, so that it doesn't continue to compound, and then, things just get worse, and then it's just a downward cycle from there. So, making sure you take their temperature, as soon as you see that they're stressed is critical. And the only way you can do that is to stay involved with your team.
Right. That's a really good point. So your team feels valued. You've got a sales process. You're on pace to do 10 million, which is incredible. So what do? What are your main lead sources? You do a lot of Google, right? I know that. Right. So you just turn on the faucet for Google and then, give them leads all the time, and then that's that, right? They sell the leads because you got a good process. Is that it?
Yeah, that's it, man. That's all we do.
Bullshit. What are some of the things that you do outside of inbound marketing, and what are the importance of those?
Yeah, so you handle our digital marketing, and you know that last summer we had an absurd amount of leads coming through Google Guaranteed. I mean, absurd, right? And then that stopped, and I called you freaking out.
What did I tell you?
You're like, it's cyclical, man. It's cyclical, right? So what that did was, that helped me really understand that, like, you just cannot be beholden to one particular lead source. And so we had, Mike and, you and I had talked about, doing some other things, maybe coming up with some other strategies and really employing like a holistic view of how we get our customers and what that's going to look like. My problem is I was so fat and happy with what was coming in from Google, right, that I didn't do anything about it. I'm just like, yeah, we'll do it. Well, when that happened, I was like, oh shit, I better get on some of this other stuff and really develop it. And so, what we do now, and I had been doing some of it. I can't say that we weren't doing any of it, but I wasn't really putting emphasis on those other areas, right? And so the two that have really been unbelievably productive for us is, one of them is going out and pursuing partnerships with other industries that can be a great referral and lead source for us. The first one being, believe it or not, insurance brokerage firms. And not in the way, right? I see your face, but not in the way that I'm asking them to help me, file insurance claims and all that stuff. Because I'm going to be honest with you, I am completely anti what's going on in the insurance industry, and I get a lot of shit about it. But I think it's being really heavily abused, and we're starting to see the results of that, and it's going to change the industry. And a lot of these guys are starting to complain about it and blame the carriers. I'm going to leave it at that. So we partner with them in the other way, where we want to help them if they have a client that has an issue. We want the broker to know that we can be a trusted ally for them that's going to give them a fair, honest assessment. We're going to document everything for them, and we're going to report everything to them so that they know that whatever's going on, they can see it for themselves. And we teach them and we train them what to look for, what we're looking for, and what the results are of all of that stuff. So we truly partner with them. We educate them on, where we really fit to help them service their customers better and help them keep their money. Okay. So that's the first one, and it's been unbelievably successful. The other way is realtors, real estate brokerages. Contractors hate realtors.
They're the worst. They just want a free inspection, right?
They just want something for free, or they want the low cost, whatever. And it's just like anybody else. You just have to teach them and educate them on, really, if they're looking for the cheapest, how that's actually against their best interest, and why using somebody like us and how we can be a good partner for them and why it's beneficial to them, teaching and training them with that, it's been extremely successful as well. So you just have to, again, it's just about, like earlier we talked about expectations and relationships and really understanding what the other one brings to the table. That's all that it is. And so that's been extremely successful for us as well.
Wow. So
Now,
you're against the entire restoration industry, or are you just? Do you feel like there's abuse in a percentage of it?
no. Don't misconstrue that. I'm against the abuses in the restoration
Gotcha.
industry.
Okay.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Again, I've been in the roofing industry since 1993. Okay, and I've watched in construction, and I've watched a lot of things happen, and I've watched what's happened to this industry and the micro industries that have popped up as a result of some of the things that are being done, and it's abusive. It just is, and so we're going to see things will be in 5 to 7 years, things will be completely different, and we can't blame anybody but the industry itself for what is happening. And I'm just going to leave it at that.
Well, we'll revisit this in 5 to 7 years and see if your prediction comes
Yeah, we
true.
will.
Yeah, we will.
We're already starting to see it, man. I mean, the writing's on the wall.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you found these ways to supplement. So I want to circle back to what Cory said about being fat and happy and how it's, I guess at that point, it's hard to see the forest through the trees, right?
Yeah.
He did have someone that brought these concerns to him before the point of this flipping several times. Yeah, spoiler alert, it was me. But Cory, he did a good job starting to move the needle initially, right? But then what I find is it is challenging. When everything is great, it's great and until it's not, right? And then when you have a situation like Google Guaranteed where the rug got pulled out, so to speak, it's too late. Anyone in sales knows that it takes time to build that pipeline, right? To have a consistent flow of opportunities. And I'm sure there's some exceptions, but for the most part, when you're selling something other than Girl Scout cookies, where it's a quick transaction, yes or no, like you have to have a robust pipeline because only a percentage of those people are going to say yes, right? So we can't wait till it comes to the point that somebody cripples us from one of our main lead sources to start doing those supplemental activities that are going to generate leads. And I've seen it, and it's paid dividends to the nth degree since you've implemented that. And I know that I've seen firsthand through clients how challenging that can be. Sometimes you're working 10-hour days, sometimes you're working 15-hour days, and there's a million things that you have to try to systematically work through. And doing shit like organizing a direct mail campaign or figuring out landing pages and bios for each one of your sales reps, like those never feel like they're at the top of the priority list, nor should they be, is what we feel. But if we consistently push these things down to the bottom of the list, they never get accomplished, right?
Yep.
So
yeah, I mean, luckily, we've been working together for a while, and we've had these conversations. I can't even tell you how many times. But the thing that was really beneficial to me is I did have the framework in place already,
yes.
Right? And we were slowly like, okay, we're doing this, we're doing that. But again, we were getting so many leads that, my guys were booked, 2 weeks out, running 10 appointments a week, that there wasn't really any,
urgency.
Desire, not desire,
urgency.
There was no urgency to do that stuff. And then when we had to, thank God we had that framework in place, and we had to really dial it in. So I'm going to tell you what the second part of that has been is we've created a really good, and I'll be honest, man, I've taken some things that other people have talked about in strategies that they've used that have been successful, and we figured out how to combine them all to really dominate where we're working, right? I mean, we have some neighborhoods around where we do a lot of work, and we own them. I mean, we literally own these neighborhoods. I mean, so much so that like we'll end up doing like 7 houses in a row, like back to back to back to back to back to back to back, right? I mean, it's crazy. So we go out, first thing we do is when my guys sign a contract, we go out, we drop a yard sign. But more than that, we go out and we give our first touch to the homeowners in the vicinity of that house of where we're going to be doing work. So we have touch number one before we even get into the neighborhood, just to basically, plant the seed to kind of keep an eye out. And it's a very well worded, well crafted first touch. Really gets people thinking, and we actually get a lot of calls off of it. Then we have our second touch where we're in the neighborhood. Again, I have my own guys, so we have wrapped trucks. We have flags that, feather flags we put out. All my guys are wearing SouthShore shirts, and we have these tents out too that we put out. So you can't miss us while we're building the job, right? And while we're building the job, we have touch number two, where we go and we interact with those same people that we did in touch number one, and it's another well-crafted offer that we want to send people to our reps landing page so that they can look at the landing page and they can capitalize on the offer. And then after we build the job, which I am unbelievably neurotic about what my job sites look like, right? Because if your job site isn't clean, if it's not well branded, and when the people driving by that you're asking them to say, hey, look at me, if we're not doing things well at that point, well, then I'm really asking them to highlight my problems and not look at how well we're doing, right? So
That's a fact.
So that's a critical part of this, right? So I'm asking them to pay attention to us. So I better make sure that what they're paying attention to is appealing. Okay.
You're not going to go on a dating app and put all your flaws on your profile, right?
Right. You're not. Yeah. Exactly. You're not going to put the worst picture of you possibly can.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a good analogy. Right. And then after we get done, we have a third touch with a last chance offer through direct mail, and I gotta give a shout out to Dope Marketing because they built a better mousetrap, man. They really did, and they've made it easy for companies to do that.
Shameless plug from Cory to Dope Marketing. Check them out. My guy David Carroll.
Yeah, so they built a better mousetrap, and so we use direct mail to reach out to them with an offer, with a last chance offer. And so that's the second part. And then the third part is referral programs and really doing a good job to try to get referrals. It's a really tricky thing to do, and it's a really hard thing to do, especially in something like roofing. But and we're still working through trying to refine that. I mean, Mike and I have come up with a bunch of different ideas, and we've tried them, and some stuff works, some stuff doesn't work. We're employing some technology now to try to capture more people with an easier way to track that and stuff like that. So it's a tough thing to do, but we keep working on it. We do get a lot of referrals. And I'll tell you, so I moved one of my sales guys, my highest producing sales guy, into the sales manager position, which was really scary to do. I haven't given him one single lead in 3 months, and he still outsells everybody from referrals by a lot every single month. So that's just a testament to what we're doing in terms of the referrals, reaching out, partnering up, what that actually does from a residual, lead basis. And so from that, I know that what we do is working really, really, really well because he does it 100% of the time really, really well. And he continues to get referral work. It's crazy. My second highest closing sales guy, same thing. I give him 3 leads a week, and he ends up selling number 2 or number 1 every month with taking the least amount of company supplied leads. So it works really, really well if these guys do it.
Yeah, I made a piece of content yesterday that'll be forthcoming soon. But it was exactly that, is that, I own a marketing agency. I benefit from people coming to me and saying, Mike, how can you help me generate more leads? But I am adamant that you should not solely give your sales rep leads provided by the company. It creates an entitlement mindset for those individuals because, again, shit hits the fan and lead volume drops by 50% for whatever reason, and there could be a myriad of reasons why. Now it becomes a situation where you've got an entitled rep who doesn't want to go out and get dirty and do the hard work. They don't want to hunt. And you can't blame them for that, right? Like, holding ourselves accountable, we've created that scenario to where they don't feel the need to. It's like paying your teenager their allowance every week and for not doing their chores, right? And then 6 months later, they're going to resent the shit out of you when you tell them they got to actually start taking out the garbage and sweeping the floor and emptying the dishwasher. Because now they've expected with no output that they're going to receive their allowance.
Yeah, I mean, this is really kind of changed my perspective on this. I always thought that, coming from being a sales guy, I always thought that, hey, I want to give these guys leads. I want to make their job easy, et cetera, et cetera. But you're 100% right, man. I mean, unless you help them go out and help them understand how to develop this themselves as well. And the thing about this is that when you give them the ability to do that, like you're really teaching them a skill to make them more comfortable. And the really interesting thing about this, so we always think that Google leads are like the highest intent lead because they went out and they searched for you, right? These referral leads are like 10 times better than Google leads. You do not get a higher intent buyer, somebody that has seen your work or comes from somebody that's done work with you that's really, really happy. They're reaching out to you based on that recommendation and they have a need, right? So they are so qualified, it's not even funny. If you can't close that sale, you should probably get into a different role because you suck at selling.
Sheesh. So, and I'll tell you, I'm one of the guys that bangs the drum like Google is the highest intent lead. But with that being said, that for me is excluding repeat customers, referral work, right? You should be able to close 80% of those, no problem.
I'm gonna give you the caveat to this though. Okay. So as an owner and as a leader, what I take really, really, really seriously also is making sure that my reps have a good, solid company that will fulfill what they promise their customers we will do.
Yeah.
Because if there is no continuity between what you're asking your salesperson to tell your potential clients and what you actually deliver, if there's asymmetry there, it's going to be a real problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's the other piece of it. Just like you're not going to put your worst picture on a profile dating app, right? If you're going after these high intent leads from referrals and all that stuff, you better fulfill.
Oh yeah. So what is going on? Everybody keeps getting these manufacturer letters for increase, right? Like, when does it stop? How do you see this playing out?
It's never going to stop, man. I mean, it's funny. I see in the roofing groups on Facebook and all that, they're like, oh my God, there's another manufacturer's increase. What that tells me is you have a really poor understanding of the industry as a whole, but B, you have a really, really, really poor understanding on how to position that to your customers, right? It's always been like this. It's going to continue to happen. Never in the history of ever has a manufacturer given you a price decrease notice, right? It just doesn't happen. So it is what it is, man. And one of the things, it actually helps us sell because I tell people and we market this, it's never going to get as cheap as it is right now. You better do it now.
Isn't that just salesy though? It's a sales gimmick, and won't they perceive it that way?
Okay.
Is there ever any pushback from customers?
Let me ask you this: what would the pushback be?
That you're just trying to close me?
Well, that might be true, and we might own that. Say, yeah, I mean, look, this is what we do. This is. But I want you to understand this is a mutually beneficial pitch here, right? Because I want you to get in as at these prices. Yes, we're a for-profit company, and yes, this is our business. That's no secret, right? But this is mutually beneficial. You're going to get the benefit of having it at this price point, and also you're going to get the benefit of having a great company do this for you that you already need, or you can wait, and I'd love to help you then too.
Gotcha. And then you could talk
Right.
about how many price increases have happened in the last 6, 12, 24 months, right?
100%, man. Look, I'm not using this as leverage. I'm just purely stating facts here.
Yeah, it puts people in a challenging position. When prices of things go up, I think consumers are naturally kind of go on the defense, right? Of, well, you're just trying to make more money off me, or if you're setting that expectation, you're just trying to close me. But I think there is a certain tact that you can take to be transparent about why it's happening and steer them away from feeling. Because again, perception's reality, right? And if their perception is that you're just doing it to close them, you're likely not going to get the business. And maybe it was a good customer, maybe it wasn't, but you're not going to have that opportunity. So I think, understanding that and having some talking points about historical numbers and what has happened, maybe that's a really good segue to that.
Well, I think the caveat to this before you even have the conversation with this customer or potential customers, establishing the need beforehand. If you don't establish that need beforehand, then the conversation is going to seem disingenuous, right? But if you've established that need and you've already had that conversation up front and you both have agreed that there's a need there, now you can have a totally open, upfront conversation and be super transparent with them.
Do you guys put it in your quotes that it's subject to material increase or anything like that?
There's an acceleration clause in everything that we do because the material costing has been so volatile that, and we let people know that, like, hey, listen, I actually was just pitching a big commercial deal. They wanted a certain type of roof covering, and I said, okay, I can do this or I can do this, right? I can do this and I can get you built and I can almost guarantee pricing for you, or we can wait and we can do this and I can give you the acceleration whenever we get the material delivered in 12 months. Which one do you want to do?
There you go. So you're setting the expectation.
Set
Crazy.
The expectation.
So what's next for SouthShore?
What's next for SouthShore, man? I am just going to continue refining what we do. I don't really want to grow past where we're at right now. I just don't. I don't need to. So I really want to just refine what we're doing, continue to make things easier and better for the people that work for me, become more efficient, and just do a lot more fishing, man.
A lot more fishing. And with doing those things that you just highlighted, your bottom line will probably become more robust as well, right?
Yeah, that net profit number is the one that I'm more interested in than that growth gross. The gross is cute to tell people, oh, I do 15, 20 million. Okay, cool. I want to make the same amount of money you make on that 15, 20 million doing 10 and enjoying my life.
And we'll leave it at that. That is a key takeaway that I think warrants significant consideration when running a business. Pay attention to how much money you're actually putting in your pocket. Don't become fixated on I would call vanity stats and saying, hey, look, I did this much revenue, because if somebody else is doing half as much in gross revenue and they're more profitable, they're dealing with less headaches, they can go fishing more, they can do all these great things that we want to do, whatever that is, and that'll vary from person to person. That's a life I want to live, right? Except I don't like fishing, because I don't like putting the fish taking the fish off the hook. It freaks me out. So hopefully I didn't lose viewers.
I'm gonna leave you with this, man. It is surprising. It's shocking to me how many people I talk to, because look, I'm an open book. If guys new in the industry, they message me and they have questions. I mean, there's a lot of them that I'll spend time and help with them. I'll give them my perspective because I want people to be good at this. I don't feel like I have a lot of people in my area, other roofing contractors that I'm friends with, and I've made friends with them because I don't perceive them as competition. I perceive them as other guys in the industry that do really well for people, and I want the cream to rise to the top. But it's shocking to me how many people don't know their numbers, and they don't know how to identify, zero in where the problem really lies so that they can do what they need to correct it. And they get frustrated, and then they start beating their head against the wall, or even worse, they start, chastising the people that work for them, and they don't put solutions in place. If you own a business, specifically in the construction industry, and you are not solution minded, and go even further than that to be able to identify where the problem is so you can employ that solution, you're going to hate your life. It is going to be a never-ending stream of problems, catastrophes, and putting out fires. And that's where these contractors say, man, this isn't worth it, or I'm always working in the business, or whatever. So if you don't first take the vantage point of understanding how to be solution-minded, and then more than that, understand how to put key metrics in place to identify where the problems are so you can solve them and put solutions in place, it's gonna be a tough road, man. It really is.
Yeah, I agree that those things are very, very important. As I thought you would, you came by. We appreciate you stopping in to the Mission Control podcast. Dropped a ton of knowledge and experience, and we are definitely grateful for that. Anything else before we head out?
No, man, you've been a key role. You've played a key role in the growth and the strategies and things like that. And so I don't want you to lose sight of, we've done a great job, but we've done a great job because we have some really good partners, man. So you've been thank you too. You've been a key role in helping us grow and stay on track with the trajectory as well. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Well, again, thanks for stopping by. Hopefully you all watching have gained a lot from this conversation, and we'll be back soon.
Appreciate you, Mike.